a 65-year-old traditional Japanese house. The request was to make daily life a little easier for an elderly family, so they wouldn't have to go outside to use the toilet in the cold. We're building a toilet in the Engawa hallway. In the first episode, we planned the entire project and started with layout lines and preparation. We checked the tilt of each beam and column one by one before building the partitions. Episode 2 focuses on replacing the high insulation window. An unexpected problem came up right away. The window didn't quite fit. With time running out, we decided to push through. This is where a renovation carpenter's judgment is tested. Episode 3 covers the flooring and installing boards on the walls and ceiling. This is the stage where the space really starts to take shape. The wall boards didn't go in as planned, and repeated mistakes created a bad cycle of frustration. It was a day that really reminded me how difficult carpentry work can be and how real the job site is.
今日はですね、現場の既存合わせをするために造作材をですね、作ってます。
This is a narrow square trim around the window sash. It's a small finishing trim piece. This one is a thin baseboard. This is a door sill made from solid ash wood. This is the hallway baseboard. It was made to match the height of the existing door sill. And this is the ceiling molding. It's used as a ceiling trim. This is trash. And this is the frame material. It's used as a side post for openings. These materials are planned and painted to make custom-built trim pieces. On renovation sites, standard factory-made parts aren't always enough. To blend old sections with new ones, custom trim made from solid wood is essential. This is the final day of carpentry work. As the job nears the end, there's a unique atmosphere on site. We start by finishing the areas around the openings that weren't completed during the last board installation.
ここだけなんでベニヤなの？
収まりが悪くなっちゃって、もっと本当は向こう行きたいんだけど、こっち出すとかっこ悪いから、ここの見た目を良くするために向こうにやったら、ここの壁圧が足らなくなってベニヤにしました。まあ全てはこのサッシが入り積み用にしなかったからこんなに苦労してます。
Ideally, I'd like to finalize every detail before ordering, but on real job sites, that's not always possible. The mistake from episode 2, the window replacement, is clearly affecting things here. This is when 5.5mm plywood really helps. It's light, easy to handle, and perfect for fine adjustment along the wall edges, which makes it very useful in renovation work.
まあまあね。そもそも収まりが悪いんじゃないの？これ。
Next, we start installing the custom trim made from solid wood. We install the baseboard that was made to match the height of the door sill. There's a slight height difference between the hallway sill and the flooring. To make the baseboard sit flush on the floor, I shaved down the top edge of the sill slightly. The angle doesn't quite match yet. I'll adjust it by just 1 millimeter. The cypress baseboard fits perfectly now. Next, I filled a small gap of just a few millimeters between the window sash and the wall with polyurethane foam. I'm leaving the column exposed like this. Instead of inserting a window frame, I install a simple angle cover, then add narrow trim pieces on 3 sides to cover the small gaps. Here, I installed 15mm square trim wrapped around 3 sides. Next, I installed a frame where the existing sliding door will hit. I transfer the tilt of the lintel and sill onto the frame I made. This is the layout marking we did first thing on the morning of day 1. Using these layout lines as the reference, we decided all the positions. At the end of the job, this frame lands exactly where planned. As carpenters, we decide the final shape first and then work backward from there. I cut the frame so it can slide into the grooves of the lintel and the door sill. The small protruding section between the lintel grooves is cut out using a multi-tool. I tap the end grain of the wood to make it fit more easily, a traditional method called kigoroshi. I cut the frame while leaving just a bit of the reference layout line.
ついてないよ。
こんな。曲げ切らん?
Using a jack, I lift the lintel slightly. The idea was that if I lifted it a little higher and let it settle back down, the fit would be perfect. but there's still a slight gap.
で、ここはついてないね。
Honestly, this one is just my cutting mistake. I still have a lot to learn. That wraps up the work in the Engawa hallway. After resetting my focus, I move on to installing the ceiling molding. I use a sliding miter saw to notch out the center section. The molding is installed between the new wall and the exposed ceiling framing. Next is the wall on the tatami room side. I'm installing baseboards that taper gradually from 6mm down to 4. I planned it down to the absolute minimum thickness that can still be used as solid wood. The wall on the tatami room side is finished. Now I move on to the work inside the toilet area. This is an add-on door sill made from hard ash wood. Only the area under the vertical door frame is carved down by 1mm to fine-tune the height difference. Prefabricated doors come with a 4-sided frame set that includes the sill, and using that would be easier. But those factory-made sills aren't solid wood. Inside, they're MDF, or finished with a thin surface sheet. Areas with steps get hit easily, so the surface tends to peel off quickly. So this time, I want to fit this solid ash add-on sill neatly under the vertical frame, but it doesn't go smoothly. The existing sill is leaning sharply inward, so I can't slide the new sill in from the side. I shaved down the twisted existing sill with a multi-tool, straightening it as much as possible. The edge of the flooring was laid out precisely. It was cut perfectly straight in advance to align cleanly with the sill. I apply extra polyurethane adhesive where gaps are likely to form under the sill. For areas where it might squeeze out, I use standard wood glue. I also make sure to apply glue to the end grain of the flooring. I slide the add-on sill carefully into place. I managed to install it, but just barely. Because the add-on sill follows the tilt of the existing one, the height difference between the floor and the sill doesn't line up properly. Having the floor perfectly flush isn't a good idea, so I leave a step of about 1 to 1.5mm. I insert a wedge through the gap in the wall and lift the add-on sill just slightly. This small step between the floor and the sill helps prevent the exposed end grain from catching your foot or cracking over time.
できた。ついたやろ。
The sill is now straight, and the step is clean and well balanced. This is the boundary between the new toilet door and the old wall. First, I adjust the door frame to be perfectly straight and plumb, using adjustment screws. The existing column is leaning, but the door frame is vertical. I shave the decorative trim at an angle and fit it tightly into the gap between the old wall and the frame.
硬いな。全部硬いな。
We're almost finished. Thanks for sticking with me a bit longer. From top to bottom, the width of the gap differs by about 4 millimeters. I gradually plane the cedar trim at an angle to match that difference. I also bevel the edges slightly to make it easier to fit into place. It's getting late in the day and my concentration is starting to fade. I stay fully focused until the very end. I thought this should only take a moment when I started after lunch. But with all the small steps piling up, it's already evening. With columns that curve and twist, fine adjustments took more effort than expected. If I fill it as is, a step would remain against the existing column. I always think, maybe this is good enough. But in the end, I'm the type who keeps going until I'm satisfied, even if it costs time. That extra step, just beyond good enough, is where I focus my effort. And that step is never an easy one. In reality, we're not always allowed to take as much time as we want. I think many craftsmen struggle with that balance.
几帳面な人は自分で言わないから。
To adjust the depth difference, I installed thin spaces between the frame and the wall.
これちょっと隙間空いてる。
うん。
だからこっちからね寄せ。
The decorative trim fit perfectly into the gap between the door frame and the existing structure. In renovations, blending the boundary between old and new is one of the most challenging parts of a carpenter's work. All of the carpentry work is now complete. We remove the protective covering and clean the tatami room that we used as a workspace. Later, the wallpaper contractor came in and the interior finishing was completed. Before handing the project over, there's one last task left. We reinstall the doors that were removed earlier. Because the sliding doors were reduced from 4 panels to 2, the order of the doors needed to be changed. And since the toilet space was built perfectly straight, the doors needed trimming and fine adjustment to fit. I shave the shoji slightly to match the curve at the base of the column. With the gaps gone, the door adjustment is complete.
だいぶ
あ、いいんじゃない？
色また
うん。
Next, the plumber ran the water supply and drainage all the way to the toilet in the Engawa hallway. It wasn't an easy job, but there were no major issues, and everything connected properly to the sewer.
大変だ
And now, it's finally finished.
Just ちょっと冷静に言うじゃん。
こんなかけ乗せた。すいません。
ギリギリギッチョン。
頼むかなもう。
ある。
A toilet has been added to the hallway beside the tatami room, right in the center of the house. The tatami room and the new wall blend together naturally. With the blue accent walling back, it's a simple, white-based toilet, but clean and stylish. This was a tight, no-margin fit, what carpenters call a butt-jointed detail, and it wasn't easy. Even so, we maximized the interior space and built everything perfectly straight and plumb. Now there's no need to go outside to use the toilet on cold days anymore. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel.